So today we're going to jump straight into eating to get lean for life. And this is the golden rule on how you're going to keep that fat off once you've done the hard work in the beginning. Some of the main topics we're going to cover today are what to do when you're vegetarian, high blood pressure, and how to get ultra shredded and controlling those ratios. Let's get started. I have high blood pressure in my family, so I have to try and keep my salts low. In keeping with a PE ratio diet, where you want low salt and a high protein snack, what would you recommend, and how would you change anything with the ratios to make sure it's not hitting that blood pressure?
It's very popular in the low carb world now to say, oh, salt's awesome, eat all the salt you want. The more salt, the better. And I completely disagree with that. I recommend unlimited sodium. There are people out there who are very salt sensitive, and they absolutely will have higher blood pressure, fluid retention, and all sorts of issues from excessive sodium consumption. The other thing, there's this sodium to potassium ratio that's crucial. So of all the vitamins and minerals, potassium's the one you need the most of. You should be eating about 5,000 milligrams of potassium a day. That's 5 grams of potassium. That's a crap ton of potassium. So if you looked at hunter-gatherers, they were eating grams of sodium and potassium like exactly the same, 1-to-1. If you look at the NHANES US Dietary Survey data, 100% of Americans were insufficient in dietary potassium.
Oh my God.
And the lower the protein in your diet and the higher the refined carbs and the refined fats, the lower and lower and lower the potassium gets. So if you look at your protein containing foods, all your PE foods, they have tons of potassium in it. And so you just automatically get this amazingly high potassium, low sodium ratio when you're eating these foods that we're talking about, these foods in the book. So you have so much less to worry about when it comes to high blood pressure and stuff like that. The only foods that on this PE diet that would be problematic with sodium would be some sort of processed packaged snack food, like the dry roasted edamame does have salt on it. You know what I'm saying? If you're salt sensitive, you might want to look at the sodium content there. But everything else is like super low sodium automatically, super high potassium automatically. Basically just a huge win for salt sensitive people or anyone with high blood pressure.
That's really interesting. Because I've just read the book Ikigai that talk about the 5 blue zones around the world. And one of the common threads that they see with people making it over to the age of 100, 110, or the super centurions, is their low salt intake. They have some of the lowest salt intake in the world. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you do see low salt intakes in these populations. And you also see ridiculously high potassium intakes because, everything these people are eating is so high in potassium, like your fish and seafood, off the charts potassium. Your potato, your Okinawas and their sweet potatoes, that's insanely high potassium. So it's basically like potassium. Sodium's really low.
Can you achieve an ultra shredded build with carbs in your diet as well? So a big thing, obviously, there's a massive keto push where carbs are bad, stop having carbs. So they are very curious to know, can you achieve a shredded physique?
Absolutely. But most of your super shredded people got there by prioritizing the crap out of protein. All your bodybuilders are just living at 30, 35, 40% protein, maybe 50% during show prep when they're taking these photos for Instagram. And then actually being more liberal with carbs and then just shaving the fat as low as they can get. Fat actually has the lowest thermic effective food of any of the macronutrients. Fat's easy to passively overconsume, and you don't get the same performance boost in the gym from fat that you do from carbohydrate. So if you're really trying to get shredded out of your mind, I personally like pulling back from carbs and fats equally in terms of calories. So like 40% protein, 30% each carbs and fats, that's going to get you the most shredded, but it's going to end up actually being about twice as many grams of carb as it is protein, just because, lower energy density. I don't recommend ketogenic diets. I don't think that's optimal. I love carb restriction. I do think that if you're really trying to get shredded, you want to equally reduce your calories from carbs and fat.
It's funny because yesterday you shared an Instagram post of just people with protesting signs saying a calorie restriction should come from carbs and fats. And I sent all screenshots of them to certain clients. Can you guess the message that they're trying to put out there? And they were like, yeah, we get it loud and clear. In the PE diet book that you wrote, you speak about you're choosing an energy source. So you can either be a high carb, low fat, you can be a high fat, low carb. If you wanted to be a mid-range carb, mid-range fat, is there a particular type of grams people should be aiming for, as an example?
I kind of like maybe a 3-2-1 on the gram. So like 3 grams of protein to 2 grams of carbs and 1 gram of fat. But the grams of carbohydrate will be a little higher. First of all, at least 10, 20, 30% of those grams will be fiber and indigestible if you're doing the PE diet right. You have to be a lot more surgical with the carbs. You have to be a lot more precise with the carbs. You have to worry more about timing with the carbs and quantity and the when and why and how. And the fat is more passive, right? You eat it, it takes, 12 hours to even fully digest and go through your lymphatic system and your chylomicrons in your liver, and then kind of end up somewhere, usually just straight to your fat cells. So like fat is like less important, less precise, less tactical. And so the protein, definitely the most important in grams. Carbohydrates second, and fat is third. And then the reason you can be more liberal with carbohydrates is because it has a much lower energy density, less than half 4 calories per gram instead of 9. And then also you are also dealing with a carbohydrate to fiber ratio, the indigestible fiber versus digestible carbohydrate ratio that you can play around with. So you can keep the carbs a lot higher and then just play around with that ratio more. Cool. If you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I like a 3-2-1. So like 150 grams of protein, 100 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. You know what I'm saying? 3-2-1, a multiple of something. Yeah. That could be body weight in kilos or whatever. But those are roughly going to get you to 40% protein, 30% each in calories from carbs and fats. And so I kind of like this just general 3-2-1 mindset for grams of protein, grams of carbs, grams of fat.
It's really interesting because one thing I've noticed with all of my clients, the first thing I get them to do, 4 to 7 day food diary. I want to know where they're at with their macros so we can break everything down. And the average protein intake is between 30 and 60 grams per day, which is just, and most people when I tell them, right, so I think you gave a formula, I'll say a formula, on an interview once, where the best place to start is by your height, especially if someone is quite overweight. If you're 5'10", it's for men, it's 110 grams for the first 5 feet, then 5 grams every inch after. Women, 100 grams for the first 5 feet, and then 5 grams every inch after. And they're just absolutely blown out the water. They're like, I don't know how I can possibly eat that much. And so, like, right, okay, we need to just start gently, like increase by 10%. I want to see you can do this regularly, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Everyone's like, I could never eat that much protein. And a couple of answers, yes, you want to slowly progress it. You just take where you're at and just slowly, incrementally progress it. But the underlying way to be able to eat that much protein is choose leaner proteins and scale back on your carbs and fats. You will actually be hungry enough to eat a chicken breast, guaranteed. So that's the secret. It's like choose leaner proteins and scale back on carbs and fats, and you will find you're actually hungry enough to eat these leaner proteins. And but you have to progress it. You have to do all these things a little bit all at the same time. A little bit more protein, a little bit less carb, a little bit less fat. Just like lifting weights, you add micro load, add some weights to the bar. You're doing the same thing, getting your protein higher and your carbs and fats lower. It's like progressive overload.
When it comes to, and this is an interesting one as well, a lot of people follow Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and become very obsessed with his epic cheat meals. As you can imagine, they're quite, they do set quite the standard. The question is, are cheat meals going to affect fat reduction and muscle mass increase? Do they have a negative impact?
A cheat meal with a bunch of calories won't negatively affect adding muscle. It might actually have quite enough calories to get around before. But you can absolutely gain fat in one meal. Now, a lot of people will do, instead of a cheat meal and a general refeed, they'll just do a carb refeed. The Rock probably can hold 800 grams of glycogen in his liver and his muscles. So if he's been on an extremely low carb diet for more than 3 days and done any kind of glycogen depletion workouts, he could probably do a carb refeed of 800 grams of carbs, and it would all just go into his muscles, and he might literally gain no fat at all. He'll gain a ton of weight, of water and glycogen weight, but he won't gain really any fat. But if you're having just a general refeed cheat meal where you're eating donuts and pizza with carbs and a bunch of fat with it, you will actually definitely gain fat in one meal. That can absolutely happen. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have cheat meals, because you should, to keep it sustainable, you should absolutely have cheat meals, for sure. But don't think that you won't gain fat from that, because you could.
It's really interesting, actually. You said something there that, strangely enough, didn't think of at all. The size of the Rock Johnson, and obviously, clearly, because his muscles can store a lot more glycogen, a lot more carbs than my body. So for me to even attempt to do a cheat day similar to him, even if I did do a 3-day low carb where my body's completely empty of it, I would be way over consuming, where for him, he may actually only be just hitting everything just right.
Absolutely. Right. So his ability to store glycogen in muscle is going to be way higher than the average person. And if he did any glycogen depletion prior to that meal, he's going to have a super compensation effect where he's going to be able to dispose of it. So he's going to be able to partition a huge ton of that cheat meal into lean mass and actually literally not get much fatter. And your average person can't get away with that, especially if they didn't do this kind of dietary and exercise depletion beforehand.
When you start looking at those people, you start looking at people who are reaching their genetic potential. And I've always found the more elite, the more peak you go, the more measured and calculated everything you consume, everything you do becomes.
Yeah, I agree.
When it comes to living your life, most people focus on trying to peak everything. The Instagram mentality, you might want to call it. Personally, I think that is extremely toxic. So I always say, look, never go for peak unless you are going for an event or a specific thing that you need to be on point for. Other than that, it should always be focusing around optimum. What is the most optimum way I can live my life? You know, I'm like 90% happy with how I look all the time. When it comes to this, what would be your biggest golden nugget or your biggest advice to people who are looking to change their way of life and adopt something completely new, like the PE diet?
Sustainability is everything. I don't like anything with a stop date. You really are just trying to take where you're at and make some small little tweaks to it that you can permanently sustain. You know what I mean? Like, could you go on a 0 carb, carnivore, 1 meal a day diet forever? Hell no, absolutely not. Never at all. But could you go from regular bacon to turkey bacon? Yeah, you could actually do that. You could do that forever. Could you a couple of times a week, instead of eating just like an entire pizza, could you eat, steak and salad? It's not extreme. You're not trying to go 100% this and 0 mentally improve it in small, sustainable ways to try to reach the top of that U-shaped curve that's absolutely optimum. And sustainability is everything. So you just want slow little changes getting you closer and closer. And the only competition you have on earth is yourself yesterday, right? That's all you're trying to be. You're trying to be 1% better than you were last week or last year. If you could just remove 10 grams of fat and 10 grams of carbs from each meal, that's 100. That's over 100 calories, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You'll just cruise right down your ideal body weight and stay there. And so you don't need to become a raw vegan. You don't have to go on a juice only diet. You don't have to just eat raw liver and be keto and carnivore. No, you just need to figure out how to eat the same protein you're eating now or a little bit more, but shave 10 grams of carbs and 10 grams of fat. I to every little meal in a super sustainable way, and then you just slowly get to your goal.
There is one more question. I did miss it. So a few of my clients are vegetarians, so they find it particularly tough to hit their protein amount, especially if they have a fasting protocol. More often than not, we have to completely scrap the fasting just to make sure they have enough time to get that food in because they're just so full. Have you got any special recommendations to make that a bit easier? Because sometimes, even if they're hitting their target, their protein target, leaning out as much as they would like. And one person in particular he's actually gone onto chicken just to see the difference of, is it just easier and better in general to include meat than the vegetarian option?
The first thing I would say is try to be the most liberal vegetarian you can. Be a lacto-ovo pesca vegetarian, you know what I mean? And then just really focus on the few animal foods you do feel comfortable eating. Like if you're comfortable with dairy, just eat the hell out of low-fat Greek yogurt and low-fat cheese and whey powder, and you're just gonna automatically be better off. If you eat eggs, eggs and egg whites, just eat a ton of those. Whatever little animal product you can eat a lot of that. If you're gonna allow yourself to eat fish and seafood, eat the hell out of that. By being less and less religious and dogmatic about plants only, you're gonna broaden your nutrient spectrum, and you're gonna get way higher protein energy ratios. It's just gonna be win all the way around. So try to be less vegetarian. The other thing is, if you are a vegetarian, soybeans are for sure the best option in the entire plant world. So eat the hell out of those. I used to worry about soy being estrogenic and affecting testosterone, and that's been completely disproven. So I would be eating a lot of soybeans, edamame, soy protein powders. I would eat fake meat made out of soy. I would eat tofu. These are actually pretty reasonable, and a lot of vegan bodybuilders get just shredded out of their minds using a lot of soy protein. It's not as good, and it is your very, very highest bang for your buck in the plant world. Other legumes are pretty good, just only pretty good. Like if I got all my protein just from whole legumes, like if I just ate kidney beans or black beans or pinto beans to get all the protein I eat, I would have about an extra 800 calories from carbohydrate in my day. And I would have to do a lot of cardio to burn that off. So you're not going to get to optimum body composition with a plant-only approach unless you're using soy and probably refined soy like tofu.
Okay, that's really cool. Is there any parting wisdom you would like to pass on?
Figure out how to make all of this sustainable. I don't care if you can only work out 5 minutes a day and just turn that into a habit and do it forever. You know what I mean? Start now, do a little bit of everything and try to make it sustainable. A little bit more protein, a little bit less carbs, a little bit less fat, a little bit of resistance exercise, a little bit of cardio, and then you can progress it from there. So just get started. Like, don't plan some elaborate workout program that starts next week or tomorrow or next year. Just like boom, right away. Get started doing all this stuff a little bit and then figure out how to progress it over time.